So I'm back. I am heading out right now. But I wanted to make a quick video. There's a lot of videos I really need to make. But this video is basically just talking about my birth and how all that went. Because, as I said in my previous video, I had a pretty bad birth, pretty traumatic. And that's also one of the reasons it wasn't filmed. If it was filmed, it probably would have been a little worse. But yeah. So what happened is, as you know, my due date was December 6th. Well, when I went and saw my new doctor, after doing measurements of my belly, an ultrasound and everything, he was actually measuring at the original due date, which I believe was November 27th, I want to say, or 26th. I think it was November 26th. It was the due date they ended up giving me towards the end due to him measuring larger. And so I'm like, okay, well, then, because honestly, that was originally my due date, but because my cycles are so long, it's not a 28-day cycle. So therefore, what is a normal 28-day cycle for somebody, like a due date of that would be normal for someone who has a 28-day cycle. But for someone like me, who doesn't have a 28-day cycle, it was off a week. But after doing measurements towards the end, he was completely measuring on track for that due date. And so the way it works here with my doctor is they won't induce you unless you're like a week within your due date. And so since my due date was November 26th, my 38-week appointment, we scheduled the induction because I know earlier I said I didn't want an induction, but my pregnancy was so bad and I was in so much pain that I didn't really see another way around it. And I was opposed to getting a C-section, but I wasn't at the same time. Part of me wanted to get a C-section, but part of me really wanted to just experience birth, just because that's how it's supposed to be. Well, needless to say, I did experience birth, but that was not, oh my God, that was not fun at all. Anyway, on my 28-week or 38-week appointment, we scheduled the induction for, actually, the induction was scheduled for November 19th at 8 a.m. But the whole day, they had too many patients. And obviously, an elective induction does not take top priority. And so on the 20th, the next day, is actually when they did start the induction. So I ended up having him November 21st at 6:02 p.m. 2016. And what led up to that is the induction started at 8 a.m. and they started with Cytotec. And if you don't know what that is, that's a tablet they put near your cervix to help you dilate and thin out. And they had that in for 8 hours and it didn't help. And so therefore, because it still didn't do anything, they typically don't start with Pitocin until after 2 rounds of Cytotec if it didn't help. Well, we did the Cytotec for the first 8 hours, and then they checked me, and because when I went in, I was 1 centimeter dilated, and I believe I was 80% effaced. If I remember correctly, I was 80% effaced. And, but I was at that, I was 1 centimeter and 80% for a good 2-3 weeks. I was in prodromal labor, for, I want to say 2 months. And that was not, that was not joyful or pleasant at all. But, you know, some bodies react in a different way than others. And that's totally fine. That it happens. So they did the Cytotec at 8 a.m. and they did another round of Cytotec 8 hours after that, and there was still absolutely no change. Then they talked about doing a Foley bulb catheter, and I've heard about those things, and so I was terrified to get one. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm going to have one of those. At least I wasn't going to have one without an epidural. And so around 10 p.m. on November 20th is when I decided, okay, you know what, I'm just going to take the plunge and get the epidural. As most of you know in my previous videos, I was really against getting an epidural. But towards the end of the pregnancy, I started getting a little more comfortable with the idea of it because I was thinking about having a C-section. And obviously, you're going to have to get a spinal when you have C-section. So I got comfortable with the idea of having one. And so I finally consented to getting the epidural at around 10:30, 10:50. I think it was around 10:50 when it was all done and over with, when I finally, could lay back down. At first it worked a little bit, and then around 1:15 in the morning, November 21st, my water broke, and I was almost asleep. Like, I had almost just fallen asleep. My husband Brady was, the way they had the room set up, he was across the room in like a chair/bed that pulled out, and thank God, he was actually able to get a little bit of sleep. He was great through the whole thing. I feel so bad with everything that went on. We were probably up for well over 24 hours with no sleep, but that's pretty normal during birth, I'm assuming. So, my water broke, and for a little while I freaked out, but I just felt this gush of warm fluid, and I'm like, oh yeah, my water broke. I knew my water broke at that point. And so I called Brady, honey, wake up, my water broke. But I think my words were, I think my water broke, which I don't know why I said I think my water broke, considering I obviously knew it was my water that broke. So I don't know what was up with all that. But my water broke then. And from then on until he actually came out, my water was just gushing. It was constant. It just, it did not let up. It did not stop. It didn't calm down at all. And I lost a lot of blood during the delivery. I was pushing for, I think I was pushing for a good, what was it? 6 hours? 4 to 6 hours, I think I was pushing, if I remember that correctly. It's obviously been about 6 months since I delivered him, so some of the details are a little foggy, and a lot of it, I remember details of it, but I don't remember the actual delivery, and you'll understand why as I get further along in this video. Because, as I was saying, I was pushing for about 4 to 6 hours. He was crowning. I know for a fact he was crowning for a little over 4 hours. And my epidural ended up failing on me. I want to say 6 hours after I got it. And I was having a lot of pain. And so I asked him, can you turn it up, turn the medicine up? And they did, but that didn't help. So unfortunately, I was numb from my knees down, which is not where I needed to be numb, obviously. And so, unfortunately, it didn't happen the way I wanted it to. But birth doesn't happen the way you want it to. I had a great doctor, though. Honestly, I love my doctor. I still love my doctor. I still see her. I did not like the nurses, and I did not like the staff there. The staff was terrible. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But honestly, the only reason I'm even still seeing that doctor is because I like, the network is because I like the doctor. If I didn't like the doctor, I wouldn't even stay in the network. But, so the epidural failed about anywhere from 6 to 8 hours after I got it. And then, like I said, I was pushing for about 4.5 hours. I tore in 6 different places, and I had to get a little over 30 stitches. It was a very painful recovery. that was, I to this day, I say it was as painful as delivery itself. But after going through that and delivery, I actually have to say that what was more painful was most likely the pushing. That still was pretty painful. Looking back at both, I can see why I was feeling like recovery was worse, and that's because I was already sleep deprived. I was already in a lot of pain from delivering. I was already in a lot of pain from the sharp shooting pains of all the stitches. I needed a lot of repair done. And I was seeing a doctor like every week for the first 2 to 3 months after my son was born, in and out of the hospital because I couldn't manage the pain anymore. So the whole situation was actually pretty bad. The only thing good that came out of it is a very healthy baby. But he came out blue. Unfortunately, he came out blue. But he didn't need any help breathing. He came out being able to breathe on his own once he finally came out. But they were about to use like forceps and a vacuum. At that point, I was like begging them to, because I'm like, just get him out. And no joke, guys, the ring of fire is a legit thing, and it hurts so bad. And when you feel it for hours on end, oh my God, it's horrible. I understand now why women get epidurals. I was opposed to it in the beginning of the pregnancy, but after going through it myself, nope, I'm good for the epidural. It was not pretty. However, when you're in that moment, I'll be honest, I personally did not, I did not think that it would be, that intense. And it didn't, like, I look back on it now and it feels like I started labor and had him, like, really quickly. But I was there for a good 30-some hours before he was actually born. I will definitely never do an induction again unless it's legitimately medically necessary. And in that case, I would just have them do a C-section. Because if it's that necessary for the baby to come out, well, then I don't think the baby needs to be going through the stress of labor. Because the baby feels just as much pain as you do during labor. I mean, imagine being shoved through this tiny hole, which, I mean, it's tiny, but it's not. I mean, they're equipped to adapt to it. But, oh my gosh. If it's ever medically necessary, just do a C-section. And that's all I'm going to say about that. At least for me. And right after he was born, he was pretty alert, actually. He did great on his APGAR score. He got a 9 out of 10, which is fantastic, especially for a baby that was deprived of oxygen for quite a few hours. We tried breastfeeding. Babies have this thing called the golden hour, and it's basically the first hour after they're born. And that's kind of an hour where you really need to spend with your baby and bond with him or her. And we actually got 2 hours with him, which was awesome, before they did weighing and all kinds of stuff. Unfortunately, we really had a hard time latching. He really couldn't latch. The first time he latched, that was the only time he really latched at all. And honestly, I don't know if he actually nursed, but I know he suckled for a good 2 hours, 1.5, 2 hours, but he couldn't actually, get a proper latch on, because unfortunately I've got flat nipples, and that makes nursing very difficult. We stuck with it as long as we possibly could, and he was still gaining weight, but his body was not reacting well to my milk. And so at, I think it was a 1.5 weeks old, we finally had to stop nursing. And the next, 2 or 3 days after we stopped nursing, my milk was completely gone. So, I like to think it happened for a reason. It was pretty upsetting, and, I still wish we could have nursed, but, there are some circumstances that just kind of prevent that from happening. He couldn't latch. He ended up having a really bad tongue tie that was all the way to the tip of his tongue. And he had that since the day he was born. They fixed it when he was 2 days old, but that still didn't help with nursing at all. And so it was a complicated situation, but I still don't regret it. If I knew then what I know now, I probably would have tried to continue nursing, because there are things that, you can do to, help your milk supply, and things you can use to help the baby latch better. But at the same time, like I said, he didn't react well to my milk. And so, it honestly, it all just didn't work the way it was supposed to for nursing. So if I had my choice, if I knew that he would have had problems, I probably would have started him out on formula right after my colostrum was gone. And the reason why is because he cried for days and days and days on end because he was starving hungry. And I pumped a lot, and we gave him milk from a bottle, but that still wasn't satisfying him at all. And so he was miserable, and he was so hungry. And so it was upsetting, because as a mom, once you have your baby, there's just this bond you have when you nurse your baby. And I think all of you guys who've had kids can understand that and can agree with me on that. But, it didn't work out, and, you can't really beat yourself up over it. If you can't nurse your baby for whatever reason, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Don't beat yourself up over it. And that's the biggest thing I did. I beat myself up for it for weeks and months, and it was wasted energy, and it wasn't worth it, because my son is now absolutely thriving, and he's doing great on, the formula he's on. It was a long process finding the right formula for him, because we thought he had a lot of stomach problems, but turns out he had a corn allergy, and that's what caused a lot of the problems with the formula that he was originally on. So he's now on Similac Sensitive, and he does great on it. I honestly wouldn't change it for him, because he's doing great. And he will be 6 months old May 21st. So just in like 2 weeks. Oh my goodness. It's flying by, guys. I'm not kidding you. Once you become a mom, life flies by. The days are short, but the weeks are long, if that makes sense. There are some days that just fly by really quickly, and then there's some days that drag on. But the best thing I've realized is to cherish the times you have with your kid or kids, and just don't take for granted what you have and the time you have with them, because once that day's gone, you're not going to get that day back. And it's true. When people say, oh, cherish the moments, they're not kidding, because they do go by fast. I still, to this day, look at newborn pictures of my son, and I'm like, where did the time go? He was so little, and he was so tiny, and he was so cute, and he still is. But he's now a lot bigger, and he's almost sitting up on his own now. And he's trying to crawl. He stands up. And it's crazy, because just even 3 months ago, he couldn't do all this stuff. But honestly, motherhood's amazing. It's awesome. And fatherhood is too. I don't know the depths of fatherhood, because obviously I'm not a father, I'm a mom. But honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's a great experience. Like I said, the birth was pretty bad. If you guys want more in-depth details, I can make another video on that. I think I covered everything in this video for birth. But if there's any questions, just go ahead and comment. I can add my Snapchat link at the bottom. Yeah, I can answer whatever questions you guys have. I hope this is an informative video for any other new moms out there that are kind of going through what I had to go through, or had a really bad birth like I did, just know that, if you're in the beginning stages and you're in a lot of pain and you tore, just know that it does get a lot better. Believe me, I thought the pain would never end. I thought I would never get back to my normal life, but it did. And everything works out for the good. You just have to give it some time, and you have to let yourself heal. And it's hard once you become a mom, you want to put your child first, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you can't take care of your baby if you don't take care of yourself. And that's something I struggled with a lot. I wanted to put my son first, but then I didn't take care of myself. And so that took some time to put in perspective and take care of him more than me. But I also had to take care of me. So, and it's normal as a new mom to do that. But just know everything gets better. The pain does go away. It's totally worth it. And just look at your precious little baby that you have. It's totally worth it. And in just 3 months from now, you're going to look back and be like, so why was that going on? Why was I upset about that? Why was I in pain? Believe me, it'll happen. You don't think it's going to happen, but it does. And it's worth it. So if any of you guys have questions or comments, leave them in the box below, and I'll hopefully talk to you guys for my next update. Thanks, guys. Bye.